Hello, I'm Kate. I'm the yoga teacher at North Norfolk Physio. This is a very, very short class to help you mobilize your spine in a really gentle way. It should be accessible to a lot of people so long as you can get down onto the floor. We will look at how the pelvis movement influences the spine and how it changes spinal curves. So come down to lay onto a mat. Take your time to get there. And then when you find yourself onto your mat, have your feet flat to the floor, your knees bent. You might lift and land the pelvis to see whether you can find a little bit more length in your lower back. Notice where your head is. It might be beneficial to pop a pillow or a cushion under your head if you feel you're lifting, if you feel your chin is rising up. Think about how you can support your body here. Then soften your shoulders. Can you broaden across your collarbones? When you feel you are laying down and you're comfortable, for a moment, pause. Take in the shape of your spine. Take in how your head lands, the back of your shoulders, the back of the pelvis, and the curves that rise away from the mat, the back of your neck and the back of your waist. See if you can understand, if you could draw a picture of your back, how might that look, of your spine? These are your natural curves, and this is your starting point for movement. Take a deep breath in, lift into your lungs, and you can sigh the breath out through the mouth. Breathe in again, big breath, and exhale. See if you can allow the breath to settle into a more regular rhythm now. You're not trying to force or grasp at your breath, but a smooth cyclical motion. Breath in and breath out. Can you feel your rib cage rising and falling with every breath that you take? And take in your whole body, in your mind's eye. How do you feel today? How your bones, your muscles, your joints. And without criticism or judgment, let those feelings that you experience, let those sensations really inform how you move. So when you're ready, you can slide your legs long. You might have to wiggle on your mat, reach out through your toes, and arms will reach up over your head. If your shoulders feel restricted, think about taking your arms a little bit wider and then lengthen out as far as you can. Maybe spread your palms, spread your toes, and really thinking about how far can you get your fingers away from your toes, and notice the tension that starts to draw in through the body. Increase that. So squeeze your quadriceps, maybe squeeze your glutes a little bit. Lift into the rib cage, reach as much as you possibly can. Hold that kind of rigidity in the body. Take a big breath into that. And on your exhale, let it go and let the body land. Elbows soften, feet roll out to each side. There's a real sense of ease. Reach again. Create structure and stability in your body. See if you can squeeze your muscle tissue in as your limbs reach away from each other. Again, a breath in, and you let it go. As you exhale, you soften. And so already you begin to understand your capacity to hold into both of these states. Sometimes we don't realize that we can actually, when we're holding in tight into the body, we can release, we can let go and find a little bit more ease. Walk your feet up to your hips and draw your knees in towards your chest. Hold on to your shins. And then pulling the thighs closer round into your spine. Lift your nose towards your knees. And then lengthen out. Land back. So the back of your head, shoulders, pelvis lands. Curl up. You create a lovely C shape through the back of your body. And then you find your natural curves. Can you understand how you move from flexion, where we curl, and then back into a more lengthened position, a lovely S shape through the spine? If you were to draw this out again, can you notice the change in shape, our ability to move through the vertebral joints? Curl in and lengthen out. We'll pause here, finding your natural curves, and hands will come onto your knees. Start to circle and mobilize into your hips. So we'll roll the knees in opposite directions. And you might notice as you let your knees roll out and towards the bottom of the mat, how you tip your pelvis. You might find as you pull the knees in towards your body, how the spine flattens. So already we can begin to understand how the pelvis influences our spinal curves. Change direction with your knees, let the knees roll in towards each other and out and back. Notice any kind of clunks or difficulties or restrictions you feel in your hips, and you can have a choice whether you want to stay away from those, kind of stay on an edge of comfort, which is perfectly acceptable. Or if this is about muscle tightness, you might want to stretch into that movement, into that range of movement. Land your feet down onto the mat. Your heels need to be about hips width apart, but there may be variations, and that's okay. Heels of hands will come onto your hip bones and fingertips angle towards your pubic bone. We'll take some pelvic tilts here. Tipping the pelvis back, we flatten the spine, the pubic bone will lift, and see if you can feel how the fingertips lift as you do that, and roll towards your tailbone now on the mat, feeling the bridging and arching through the back of your waist. Continue to take this movement. So you're flattening and lifting your spine from the mat, but this is initiated by rolling the pelvis. So coming back to that idea again of where the pelvis is really influences where your spine is. This is relevant also when we come to standing in our everyday posture and in our movements. The next time you flatten your spine down towards the ground, lifting the pubic bone, start to lift the pelvis a little bit more, pressing the feet down. You'll rise up into a low level hip bridge, and hopefully keeping your thighs and shins more or less parallel. You can feel your gluteal muscles starting to activate and work, wrapping around the back of the pelvis to support you in this position. Try not to bridge and lift into your waist too much. There's almost a scooping through the lower abdomen and the pelvis. Now tiptoe down through your spine, one vertebra at a time, landing back into your natural curves. Let the back of the waist lift, and then roll back up. Flatten your spine, pubic bone starts to lift, feel your glutes wrap around and support you, lifting into your low level hip bridge, and then roll yourself down again, all the way. Lift up again, and hold. Can you feel equal balance through your feet? Can you spread your toes? See if you can feel your big toe mound, little toe mound, and heel connect to wherever you are. And 50% weight, more or less, in each foot. Lift your arms up towards the ceiling, so fingertips point upwards, and circle into your wrists. I like to move in lots of different directions here, just letting the spiral translate from your fingertips all the way down your arms. And you can watch your arms as you do this. You might even feel or see the muscles pulsing in your forearms, the muscles that move the fingertips and the wrists. And that spiral, you can let it, if you make the movement a little bit grander, move into your shoulders. And then reach up high. Imagine you're holding a tea tray above your head, pulling fingertips back to the head end of the mat, still maintaining that length onto the tailbone. You might have let that slip away a little bit, and then point your fingertips towards your knees. So just moving into your wrists. And again, there's a pulsing through your forearms, the muscles activating. And then lengthen your arms out back behind your head. You might take them wide into wide V. If there's any discomfort in your shoulders, press into your feet, lift the pelvis a little bit higher, and slowly lower all the way down until you land down onto your pelvis. And then you can soften a little bit. You can find a little bit more ease. Another big breath in and sigh the breath out. While you toe heel, feet wide onto the mat. And we'll take a spinal twist. I like to take my time to get into the spinal twist by letting my knees roll over to the left and the right, and gradually, incrementally lowering a little bit further with every rotation. It gives you time to really understand areas of the spine that might feel a little bit tighter than others. So as you increase your movement, as you let the pelvis roll over to one side, you'll feel the waist turn, the lower ribs. And the further down you go, you'll start to feel that movement perhaps come into the opposite shoulder blade. So as knees come to the right, you might feel a lifting through your left shoulder blade. And allow that to happen. But maybe you assess side to side. How is your left compared to your right? And is there a quality of movement as you let the knees land? Again, finding control and stability in the movement. We'll let the knees roll over towards the right and just land. I'm connecting my inner arch of left foot down onto the ground and pressing, lifting and ironing out the crease on the front of my left hip. You still find here, almost like your hip bridge, where you're lengthening your tailbone and really feeling a lengthening into your left quadricep through the hip flexor and even a small scoop on the belly. You can let your arms just drape as you wish. It's quite nice to hold your left wrist with your thumb and forefinger of the right hand and gently lengthen, pulling your left arm up over your head. You'll feel a long line from left knee to pelvis, to ribs, to arm, to fingertips. And when you get here, when you're holding, and there is effort to be here, this isn't completely passive, can you bring your breath into the left rib cage? So expanding, you breathe in. And that sense of softness as you release, keep lengthening through your left arm. On your next exhale, let go of your wrist, let go of the tension through the inner arch of your foot and almost melt yourself back, sliding into your central position, knees up towards the ceiling. And we'll take this movement over towards the left. So slowly lowering your knees, understanding the spiral that's starting to happen through your body as pelvis turn, ribs, maybe lifting into your left shoulder blade, or maybe not, depending on how much mobility you have through your spine. The right foot anchors down the inner arch and then press and lift into your right hip bone. If you feel comfortable to do so, hold your right wrist and gently pull with your left arm to lengthen the right side of your body. See if you can reach through the right knee, knee to pelvis, pelvis to ribs, ribs to underarm, and all the way up towards your fingertips. And then breath. You breathe in and expand into the right side of your lung. And then you can soften and release. We'll take one more breath here before you can let go. Bring your knees back through center. And then let's lift ourselves up. Bring yourself up onto all fours. You can rock and roll. I quite like to do this along my spine. But if you feel more comfortable to roll onto your side and slowly make your way up, that's perfectly fine. So bring your hands under your shoulders and knees under hips. And we'll take our cat-cow. I quite like to see, from a point of proprioception, of knowing where you are in space, if you can find the natural curves of your spine here. So just as though you were laying on the ground and you've been turned up, but we don't have the feedback of the ground to feel the back of our head, shoulders and pelvis, but can you have a sense that this is where you are? And from your kind of optimal position, your natural curves start to move into flexion extension. So flexion would be to push the mat away and round into your spine, lifting between your shoulder blades and maybe looking towards your knees. Extension is letting the belly lower, the chest draws through the arms and shoulder blades draw back onto your rib cage, maybe gaze forward. Press into your hands, lift and round into your spine, and then let the chest move forward. So hopefully you can feel how you're articulating through your vertebral joints. Maybe you're starting to build a picture of areas that maybe are restricted or tighter and areas where you have a sense of freedom and more movement. Lengthen out through your spine again. See if you can find your natural curves, and we'll come into a little bit of side flexion. You can look over your right shoulder and towards your right heel, and then turn and look over the left shoulder. Can you notice how one side of your body gets longer and the other shorter as you do this? The next time you look over your right shoulder, maybe you can spin your feet over to the right as well. Maybe look towards your left heel. And then come back all the way through and do that over towards the left. Just monitor how your knees feel. If this is uncomfortable, of course, you don't need to move and pivot on your knees. Look over the right and look over the left. Bring yourself back through center. If you wish to take a little bit of pressure off your hands, sit back into child's pose. This isn't always a pose that's comfortable for everyone because it involves a lot of hip flexion and knee flexion, so bending at the knee and the hip. So if you feel restriction here, it's perfectly okay to keep your bum lifted and maybe just lower the chest down to the floor. You can stack your hands and bring your forehead onto the back of your hands. The primary thing when we come into shell pose or child's pose is, can we lift our breath into the back of the body? So see if you can, when you breathe in, feel that expansive nature through the back of the rib cage and almost a lifting here. As you breathe out, again, this idea of softening in ease, just as we started at the beginning of the class, this capacity to make a choice to experience a sense of ease in the body. Can we let go? Can we soften? Reach your hands forward, spreading the fingers a little bit and feeling the mat. So if you've got a nice squishy mat, see if you can reach with your fingertips and press down the heels of your hands, and then bring your body back into your all fours. You'll tuck your toes under and we'll lift into downward facing dog. So lift your knees and lift your bottom. See if you can pull your sit bones back, and I'd really encourage you here to have a softness in your knees. Sometimes when we focus on the knees being straight, it pushes the body forward. So if we soften, we're able to pull the pelvis back, focusing on spinal length and not worrying so much about leg length. And when you get here, you might like to walk out, so pedal your feet, so you're stepping in mid-air. And if you really let one knee lower and the pelvis turn, you'll find how you get a spiraling through your body as well. Lower back down onto your knees and pull back into your child's pose. So sit your bottom back. You can keep your toes tucked if you wish. Turn your palms up to relieve your wrists and have a little wiggle into your fingers, maybe a circle of the wrists. And we'll just take downward facing dog one more time. So plant your hands, lift yourself up onto all fours, tuck your toes, and think about the backward and up movement. So bum moves back, pelvis lifts, and reach. Can you have an idea of the natural curves of your spine here? The back of the head in line with shoulders, in line with the pelvis. Can you soften your knees? Can you lift your sit bones back and up a little bit more, and then reaching heels towards the ground? They never actually have to touch. You can have a buoyancy in the feet, a lift in towards your lift of your heels. This really brightens the muscles in the feet rather than trying to press and flatten the heels down towards the ground. Pedal out again. You can watch the movement in your foot here and your ankle. Maybe lift and lower both heels. See how that feels. And again, lower down. Sit back into your child's pose. Relieve your wrists. Turn your palms up. Another wiggle there. And then maybe stacking your hands in front of your face. You can hot potato the hands, making fists to rest your forehead down onto them. Expand into the back of your lungs. Lovely, broad breaths. And still coming back to the idea of ease on the exhale, of allowing the body to settle. And we'll finish that. So very short practice, hopefully just to lubricate the joints in your spine. There's a really famous quote by Socrates that says, if you seek health, then first look to the spine. So when we start to move our spine and pelvis in really integrated and controlled ways with strength, but also finding that idea of a balance of ease and softness too, we start to move really well. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for joining me.